Hello and welcome to the Epilogue with Sihle Bolani. So often when we speak about transformation and diversity and inclusion in the workplace, we only ever talk about it in the context of black and white and men versus women in the traditional sense. Very rarely do we extend the conversation to the LGBTQIA plus community and how the workplace actually impacts on them. So joining me for today's conversation is Sibongile Khumalo, who is the founder of Black Thighs, which is a project that is committed to advancing the knowledge of sex and sexuality. Sibongile, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So from your experience, what are some of the experiences that kind of stand out most for you in terms of how the LGBTQIA plus community experiences the workplace?
So first, where I'd firstly begin is having access to the workplace. So before we can, have the conversation about that experience, we should ask ourselves: are LGBTQI plus community, our community, even welcomed into the workplace? Because it's funny enough. Just recently, I had a conversation with a mentor of mine. About the workspace and about the kind of work that I do. So fortunately for this conversation, I also am the PR and marketing manager for an organization called QWBA, which works to advance queer women in the workplace and queer entrepreneurs as well. So we were having a conversation about this because I was up for a consultancy gig, and I was like, I look at, my portfolio and then he was like to me, so the stuff that you're bringing, the work that you're doing, especially in terms of QWBA and plus Black Thighs, it's very controversial, and that makes it quite difficult, for people to accept you, into business or into the market, because you're doing these controversial things, because they think you're very political, and because they think, you're just gonna
shake everything up.
Yeah. So, that identification, the work that you're doing, plus your identification, is quite risky to accept you into these environments. So, and that's just my experience now. And as you can see, like just from physical presentation, I can quickly pass for straight. So now imagine somebody who's trans identifying, or somebody who is a lesbian and, expresses themselves differently in the way that they dress. So that, things like that, they act as barriers to allow you into the workplace, and that's why a lot of people in the LGBTQIA plus community struggle to even get access into the workplace. So now when you're in the workplace, it's a whole different thing, because you are then expected to behave or to express yourself in this heteronormative way in the work environment, which is really strange. There's actually this thing that I read about this trans woman in Cape Town who expressed to HR that this is who they are, and the infrastructure in the workplace in terms of like the toilet and that kind of environment doesn't work for them, because she can't use the male bathroom because that's not how she identifies. Right. And then that was a difficulty for them, because they had identified her for her. Right. They have decided that
she's a man,
so therefore she needs to use male. So those kind of difficulties, because that makes the workplace then a difficult place for her. How does she navigate this space? How does she feel comfortable to do the work that she needs to do in this space? So those are the kind, they seem very small, but they're really quite big, because they affect the way that you are productive, they affect the way that you build relationships with employees, they affect your own advancement in the workplace, because there's that kind of prejudice as well that we have to deal with in the workplace. So it's a lot. It's a lot that we have to navigate, and a lot that we have to go through, and that's why some people decide to not exercise the identification or their sexuality in the workplace. So we kind of go to work. If you are lucky enough, or if you choose to be this person that I am, you can go and easily pass and then go home, and then it's fine. But in that space, as well as you are a person who dresses in this way that it's like heteronormative kind of identification. Anyway, so if you are in that space, and then also then conversation around what transformation then looks like infrastructurally in the workplace, you have to add to that. Like you have that responsibility of saying, okay, no, this and this doesn't work for this space, because there are LGBTQI plus persons in the workplace that we need to cater for. But it makes it so difficult to want to have that conversation, because the immediate prejudice that's going to come with that. So it's a lot. I'm tired. No. It's a lot.
I mean, I think it's such an important conversation to have because if you look at it in the context of the workplace, there's still a very limited understanding of exactly who makes up the LGBTQIA plus community. You know, people currently go as far as lesbian and gay, and they're kind of done.
Yeah.
People see bisexual as just a sexual thing and not an identity thing. And so there's a lot of education that still needs to happen within the workplace. So can you firstly break down for us what all the various identities are? Because that's the other thing. A lot of people always be like, I mean, LGBT, wait, what was it? Plus, etc. So help all of us to get it right. Who forms part of those groups? How do they identify? And how do we get to a point where we are mindful and respectful of how each individual person chooses to identify themselves?
Okay. So do you want me to go through the acronym?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
It's a lot. Listen, heterosexual people, you put us through a lot. So L, lesbian, gay, well, okay, Gina, gay, bisexual, oh man.
B, bisexual.
I'm just saying, okay, L, lesbian, G, gay, B, bisexual, T, trans, I, intersex, queer, a Q for queer, and then plus for more, that exists out there. That is not officially part of the acronym as it should be.
How does queer differ from lesbian or gay? Because we have queer eye for the straight guy, or whatever that show was called. So a lot of people have kind of always associated queer with meaning gay or lesbian, and it's one and the same, either or synonym.
Yeah.
What is the actual difference?
So queer actually has a very, I want to say volatile, but that seems like a very strong word. But anyway, it's full of different kind of potentialities. So queer, right? As we understand it in our society, it comes from a very derogatory way of referring to anyone in the LGBTQIA plus community. So it has that kind of history. So now these days, in acts of reclamation, people say, okay, no, fine, we accept this identification and we are queer, all of us. But then some people don't want, that kind of identification because it has that kind of volatile history. And also there is another kind of there's an identification that is queer as well. So it's complex. Queerness is quite complex because it is both accepted and rejected within the community itself. Is that...
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Got you. We speak about discrimination a lot in the context of race and male versus female in the traditional sense. But obviously, the LGBTQIA plus community understands all too well just how far and how deeply discrimination can be hurtful. Even if you think about it, the most basic things is, people will say, has so-and-so come out the closet? But nobody expects us straight heterosexual people to come out of the closet. And by the way, guys, I came out to my family yesterday and told them I'm straight. Why is that even an expectation? So what other types of discrimination do members of this community experience in the workplace? I mean, just as an example, if you look at leadership in organizations, I personally am not aware of anybody who's part of a senior management position or heading up a successful organization that's part of the LGBTQIA plus community.
It's actually funny you should say that because we are a lot. There's a lot of us, and it goes back to what I previously said about the willingness to identify in the workplace because you know what it comes with, you understand? So that makes not representation, well, it makes representation quite difficult to audit because there is that, that kind of distancing because I don't want the kind of prejudice. But one of the people that is like really has done exemplary work and is just, I'm mad for the work that she's done, is Judy Skuza, and she works for the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and she's a queer woman, and she's doing the work, and she's up there in management, and that's recognizable. So she serves as like, I don't want to use the word icon because that's so strong, but she serves as visible representation,
Right.
as a queer woman, working at senior level positions and for an organization that is known globally as well. So those kinds of things are amazing. They're amazing to see, and they're amazing because they also then help you navigate. They also help you, kind of just be honest with who you are and your sexuality even within these spaces. But it's a slow process because we are in Africa, we are in this continent that where it is quite difficult for you to be a queer woman because it's not accepted. It's not accepted at home, and it's definitely not accepted in the workplace. So it makes it quite complex. So yeah.
I want to ask you this question, and it's so crazy to me to have to say what should organizations be doing to normalize having LGBTQIA people in an organization? And it's crazy to me because how can we be talking about normalizing humans?
Oh my God.
Normalizing who people are?
Honestly. Honestly, because I feel, and this is the conversation of transformation, right? And how intentional we really are about transformation. Because if, say for instance, we are in this environment and there's, say, 4 of us in here, right? And we want to make this place as inclusive as possible for everyone. We can't just make it fit one person and then assume the rest of it. Like, if you want to make it inclusive, you would speak to all of us and try to find out, okay, what is it that you need so that we can make this thing work? But that thing doesn't happen because we have accepted the heteronormativity of the work environment. This is the work environment. And we even say this is not a place for sexuality, but it is, because my sexuality is what defines me. My sexuality is what determines transformation. It's what determines policy in this space. It determines policy in this country. So you have to take that into consideration. Do you understand? So in organization, very rarely, and even like if we're speaking about race as well, very rarely do people do like actual real intentional transformation. Most transformation is only for the numbers, and that is where the problem lies. So if we are really intentional about it, we will bring people to the conversation. We will bring us to the table, and then we'll be like, okay, so what is it that we want to do, and we'll get that done. But we're not doing that because we have accepted that this is the work environment, and we're comfortable with that because it works for us.
And in terms of organizational policies and legal protections, are there any specific parameters that provide any kind of protection or comfort or any of that for people who are members of the LGBTQIA plus community?
Well, I mean, you have your basic non-discriminatory policies within the workplace, that HR devices, for the for the workspace, for everyone, right? But a thing that I often find is that when we're looking at discriminatory policies, our concern mostly is with race, as you have mentioned in like previously, and then we're looking at things like sexual harassment, and then we're looking at things like language things about when it comes to LGBTQI person, you don't call a person this, da 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 da. But like our policies very intentional about creating the environment that we need as LGBTQI persons? I don't think so. I think we still need to do more work in that area. We need to do more work even at the basic level of educating employees in the work environment about what this thing is. What does it mean to be a lesbian person? Because we don't know. People think like it's just, as you said, it has to do with sex. You just like to have sex with. It's not. That is not what it is. Like being part of the LGBTQI plus community doesn't mean that we just want to have sex randomly and what. Like, come on, guys.
Like it's just a party.
That's not what it is. We're speaking about our lives. We're speaking about the way that we identify, who we choose to love, who we choose to marry, and things like that. So we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be cognizant of the fact that even the people around us in the work environment don't understand what it means, don't know what it means to be bisexual, and therefore don't know how to communicate with me. They don't know what it means to be a trans person in the workplace, and so they don't know how to communicate, and so they don't know how to set up infrastructure that works for a trans person, or even also the question about infrastructure when it comes to trans people. it's not necessary that you have to build a whole toilet, a different toilet, for a trans person, but educate employees about what it means to be trans identified. That's an infrastructural thing. Do you understand? So if we can have that conversation in the workplace and we can educate, if we make the means to educate within the workplace, then we should be okay. So yeah, so that's just what I think about that.
Okay, so an important part of, addressing challenges and issues and oppression faced by marginalized groups is having allies. So within the context of the workplace and beyond, how do we as hetero-identifying people become allies? What does the LGBTQIA plus community define as healthy allyship?
Yeah. So it's quite interesting because we did, on Black Guys, we did like a kind of, not a poll, but we had a questionnaire that we did on Twitter, and then we're asking our followers what allyship then means to them. Mm-hmm. And what we found that is allyship doesn't have like a blanket kind of perspective for everyone. So people they have a very specific way that they would like allyship to work for them. Some people feel that it is important as an ally for you to stand up for them even in their absence. Some people, so we identified like we want different things from allies because we need different things, and which is understandable. So from an organizational standpoint, from as a person running an organization that focuses on this, and then also as a person working in an organization that that does this kind of work, what is important, and I'm sorry for allyship in that regard, is help us with resources, help us with money so that we can create access. I mean, like, I know it sounds a little bit, but money is important. Yeah. Money is important to create opportunities. Money is important to help with resources, to create growth trajectories within spaces. We need that kind, we need resources. And it's difficult sometimes to get these, because we're working from a marginalized and disadvantaged positioning, and we're trying to enter a market. So we're already on the outside. So, and what we're trying to do, we're trying to enter a market, and then we're also trying to bring everybody along in this market. So there's a lot of barriers, right? And so for allyship in this kind of, from this perspective, is we need people who would then open doors for us, give us resources so that we can build our own buildings and have our own access. You understand what I'm saying? So these kinds of things are important, right? And so we might not think that they are, but if we were to look at it, right, and to see, if we would see that heterosexual people, they are economically advantaged. Yeah. And it's a thing that we don't think about. And that if you can help us with that advantage, that would be great. That would absolutely be divine. So yeah, so that's just from a business kind of perspective. But in terms of social perspectives, yes, I do agree with a lot of what our followers said in terms of just being a voice. When I'm not there and you're speaking to whoever your group is, like, stand up for me, like, understand my humanity, relate my humanity to your people, like, don't disassociate yourself from me because I'm not in the space. Right. You understand what I'm saying? But then there's also like, it's quite tricky, this whole thing of allyship, because you don't want to assume somebody's voice. Yeah. You don't want to take my experience and make them yours because they're not yours. And so you need to also then make that distinction, as a person who will be speaking. So yeah, it's quite a few things that you could do as an ally, actually. Should send you that data, but these are just a few at the top of my head.
So for people who want to learn more or to get a better understanding of the work that you're doing and to educate themselves, what resources do you have? Do you have a website that people can go to and just read up on what you're doing, or how can they get involved?
Yes, so we are very virtual. So I'll refer you to two websites that you can go to. The first one is if it's for specifically career advancement and entrepreneurship, I would encourage you to go to the QWBA website, because there's what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a bulk of resources for queer women, to access, so that they can, find ways to get into the market, find ways to get employed, or get mentorship, things like that. So we're creating this environment for you to enter and just be great. Like, go on there and just be great. Find opportunities, find mentors, find people to partner with, and then for social things, for conversation, for expression, I would then send that same person to Black Dice, where we deal with all of these, where we deal with conversation around sexuality. We write, we create, we make videos and things like that. So so both needs. If you need for career advancement, QWBA so it's qwba.com. Yeah. No, wait. QWBA LLIES. So it's Q Ballies. It's something like that. Like, that's how it's spelled. And then also Black Dice. It's blackdice.org. So you can just look that up.
Okay, the details for those websites are below the video. We'll plug you in.
But yeah, so yes, you would find those resources there.
And then is there a parting shot, a message that you would want to give people who are outside of the LGBTQI plus community?
Man, I wish you'd said this so I can prepare a very deep and profound one. But what I just would like to say, and I think is important, is that we need to take time and just understand each other's humanity. Understand each other's humanity and be respectful of it. Because I'm respectful of your existence. I don't expect you to make a big dance and a coming out and whatnot. Your existence is yours, it's private, and you're allowed. Why can't mine be? Why can't I just exist freely in a space, whatever that space is? Why can't I advance in the same way that you would? So respect each other's humanity and you'll be fine.
I really don't need to say anything after that. Thank you so much, Sibongile, for joining us today. And I really hope that you guys will take on this information, immerse yourself in the knowledge, and so that we can all become more supportive of the people around us. After all, we are the ones that we need. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the link to this episode with your network. Thank you.